as you move through, you'll start to look at your reporting and really making sure that it's fully transparent and that it's fully accountable. Now, the standards alone are not enough. The frameworks are important to help give standard methods for measuring what you're doing, and the facts and figures behind what you say are critical to make sure that what you're saying is fully transparent to your stakeholders. But it's not a tick box exercise, and you really need to think about how you can add value with your reporting. If you're not careful, you could end up with a dry dump of information. So you need to think about pulling out the highlights from your reporting and really bringing your information to life. Think about the stakeholders that you want to target, what information they would like to know, and really creating a journey for different stakeholders that's easy for them to navigate through. There are different techniques that can be used, and there's some examples on this slide. There are scorecards that show where you were, where you are now, and where you are going. Very easy to just look at a snapshot. Now this chart here is very easy to read, but behind that there would be a whole series of things that have been measured to get to that point. But for the reader of the report, this is the important information that you need to pull out, not just a dry list of the facts and figures. There are things like infographics as well, and there's an example here as well of the map of the UK to show projects. And you can back up what you're saying with images, but we really need to make sure that the images are believable. Language is very important, and we need to avoid using greenwash, although this usually isn't intentional. Now, we did talk about language a bit more in detail on webinar 3, but really just to recap that you shouldn't use the word green on everything or environmentally friendly. You need to use language that's believable and is specific and backed up to really avoid making the audience skeptical about what you're saying. There are standards. If you look on DEFRA website or the Advertising Standards Agency, they do give guidelines on how to make claims around environmental and CSR details. You can really use your report and make it a USP, a unique selling point for what you're doing, and really to reinforce your brand as a company. But it must be backed up and it must be authentic. As I mentioned, it's all around stakeholder engagement, but publishing a report in itself is not a substitute for the engagement. It's an important tool, but really you need to move beyond this to create a two-way dialogue and to enable you to respond to your stakeholder feedback. Move from just disclosing what you do to fully engaging. Here are some examples of the different types of stakeholders that you need to consider. A stakeholder is anyone who impacts or is impacted by your offering. So think about which stakeholders you want to target, consider what's of interest to them, and as I said, create that journey for them through the information that allows them, that creates a journey to engage and allows them to assess your strategy, where you are at the moment, and also where you want to be moving to in the future. Stakeholder engagement can really help to drive change, and it's a continual process that needs to be adopted as part of your corporate responsibility strategy. So moving beyond the actual report, the corporate responsibility that you engage in should really be embedded across all of your company messaging. And moving beyond the report with these different techniques that are listed here. Web-based reporting is very important as it allows more interaction and it saves on resources of print. Also, if you just print a report, it can be out of date almost as soon as it's published. Also, with web-based reporting, you can include things like videos and social media. You can generate microsites around particular issues and activities that you're engaged in. A good example would be Virgin Media, who only do digital and online reporting for their corporate responsibility. Now, I'll go through an example for Marks and Spencer's and their Plan A, which really engages each of these different activities that are listed on this slide. So they look at doing radio, TV, PR. They have messages on their lorries, in their shops. There was a recent campaign called Swapping that they've just launched, and this was really clever in the fact that it's creating a new infrastructure within shops to enable consumers to recycle their clothing. It's partnering with Oxfam, but at the same time it reinvigorated the Plan A campaign in itself. And they've done road shows. You can go online and pledge as a consumer, so that's starting to create that two-way engagement. Also, they have supplier networks, and they run road shows, they look at conferences, really to look at sharing ideas across their supply chain and creating that two-way dialogue, so not just with their consumers but with their suppliers as well. Another example of a more local activity is the Rockingham Forest for Life. Now, I thought I'd go through this one because it's not just big corporate companies that can be engaged in corporate responsibility activity. SMEs can as well. A lot of SMEs are suppliers to larger companies, and they often drive change with smaller companies as a sort of condition of them providing to them. But beyond this, SMEs can also engage in their own activities. The Rockingham Forest for Life is a local approach to tackle climate change, and it's around creating woodland. And it partners with organisations such as the Wildlife Trust, Woodland Trust, the Local Planning Authority, the Environment Agency, to name a few. And it's really about engaging local businesses to create social welfare in the local community. It's not just about offsetting carbon. So really, it could be used as an example to show the values of a smaller company and for them to use as a case study example within their reporting.